everyone, this is my final project for GIS entitled Prioritizing Dams for Removal, a Spatial Analysis of the Nature Conservancy's Chattahoochee Fall Line Properties. Okay, so first I'm going to start off talking about dams and their impacts. So dams block rivers. They prevent a fish migration and limit the movement of other aquatic species. They can also alter the flow of streams and rivers. A lot of organisms depend on that steady flow for survival. Irregular flow patterns disrupt natural triggers for growth and reproduction cycles. It can also alter the habitat of a stream or river. It traps sediment behind the dam, which will build up over time. Objects that would naturally float downriver and maybe create habitat downriver can also get trapped behind the dams. And they also divert water from its natural flow. They impact water quality. So slow moving or still waters heat up more, and that can cause algal blooms and can decrease the oxygen level in the water. Okay, so Georgia actually has a lot of dams, over 30,000 in fact. And according to a survey that was done just a few years ago, we actually lead the nation in hazardous dams. Dams cause a lot of connectivity issues, so you can imagine with over 30,000 dams, that's a lot of connectivity issues. So on average, Georgia only has about 2.58 miles of connected rivers and streams. A large portion of those dams are earthen, which means they are built up out of gravel, sand, silt, or clay. Okay, so a little bit of why I chose this project, why I was interested in it. So I'm actually doing my thesis on analyzing the effects that the removal of dams and the restoration of stream channel has on stream metabolism. So I'm working at two sites that the Nature Conservancy owns. You can see maps of them here on the right, where we gathered preliminary data and then the dams were removed and the stream channels were restored. And now I'm going to go gather post-restoration metabolism data. This area of study is really lacking in research, so I thought this project would be important to maybe pinpoint some other sites where we could maybe do some future research on stream metabolism as well. Okay, so my goal for this project is to determine the number of dams located within the Nature Conservancy's Chattahoochee Fall Line properties and categorize them as either high priority or low priority for removal and restoration. So my question is how many dams located in the Nature Conservancy's Chattahoochee Fall Line property will fall into the category of high priority for dam removal? And I hypothesize that more dams will be considered high priority than low priority due to the number of hazardous dams that are in Georgia. Okay, so first I had to determine the criteria that I was going to use to be considered a high priority dam for removal. And the first criteria I chose to use is the hazard potential. So if it is a high hazard dam, it'll be high priority. If it's a low hazard dam, it would be considered low priority. I also decided to look at the connectivity gained since we have such low connectivity in Georgia. So high priority would be most connectivity gained and low priority little to no connectivity. I also wanted to look at the presence of threatened and endangered aquatic organisms. So high priority is if they're present, low priority if they're not present. And then dam type. I chose high priority to be an earthen dam and a low priority to be concrete. And that is based on research that I did showing that it is much less expensive to remove an earthen dam than it is to remove a big concrete structure. This image on the right is courtesy of the Southeast Aquatic Barrier Prioritization tool that I used to get some of my data, and that's just an image of all of the dams that they have categorized in the state of Georgia. So it's a lot of dams. Okay, so for my methodology, I first uploaded the Nature Conservancy Chattahoochee Fall Line Properties shapefile that I received from Sarah Gottlieb at the Nature Conservancy into GIS. I had to use the project tool to put it into a projection that would work best for what I was looking at. I then uploaded dam data from the Southeast Aquatic Barrier Prioritization tool. I chose to focus on Muskogee, Chattahoochee, Marion, and Talbot counties since those are the counties that the Nature Conservancy properties lie in. I used the display XY, the project tool, and then I did a clip in order to focus on just the dams that were located in the Nature Conservancy properties. And I found that there were 20 dams located in the Chattahoochee Fall Line properties, as you can see here represented by those red dots. So next I wanted to see if I could find some more data on dams. So I uploaded some data from the National Inventory of Dams, again using the Display XY, the project tool, and then I did a clip to again focus on the Nature Conservancy properties. And I actually found 3 dams that were not listed on the SARP tool. The NID dams are represented in blue here, and the SARP dams are represented in red. Some of them did overlap, but I actually found 3 that were not listed on the SARP tool. Okay, so for my analysis, I started by examining the hazard potential of the dams. I found that only the NID data actually had hazard potential data. And I found that all of the dams listed in the NID data were considered to be low hazard potentials. I then decided, so the SARP data didn't have hazard potential data, but it did have dam condition data, but not very much of it. So only 2 were rated satisfactory and all of the other ones were not rated. So that wasn't super helpful. I then examined the types of dams. So from doing some reading, I found that earthen dams tend to be all considered low hazard because they're not very big. And so if one of them were to fail or to breach, that's not going to cause a lot of harm to people downstream. So again, I had a lot of data that was unknown, just a handful that were all earthfill dams. And those are considered not as hazardous. And then the dam type from the NID data were all earthen dams as well. So I had a lot of incomplete data there. So this wasn't not the best criteria to use based on the types of dams and the location that I was looking at dams at, since most of them are smaller dams that are earth-filled, they're just not as hazardous. So I decided to move my focus to some of the other attributes. So next, I wanted to examine the connectivity gained for each dam. I found that the NID data did not contain connectivity data at all, so I had to exclude that data from this portion of the analysis. I used the graduated symbols and I did it based on connectivity gained, and this is what I found. So 2 dams stood out as the most connectivity gained. Down here in the bottom, you'll see Herds Lake Dam, and then up at the top, it's an unnamed dam, so they named them all unnamed dams place mark. Herds Lake Dam, if it was removed, would gain a whopping 11.35 miles of connectivity gained. None of the others were anywhere close to that. The next one, that unnamed dam in the top right corner, would gain 1.28 miles. And then all other 18 dams located on the properties would gain less than a mile of connectivity. So next I wanted to check out the presence of threatened and endangered species. So again, I did a graduated symbols focusing on that. First, I did one for region listed threatened and endangered species, and I found this. These were my results here. So they base this on tiers. So based on the number of species that are present. So the majority of my dam data fell into very similar tiers, all within 1 or 2 tiers of each other. So there's about the same number of threatened and endangered species in all of these locations, give or take a few. Then I also did it for state listed threatened and endangered species. And you can see this here, it doesn't change much, all within the same tier of number of threatened and endangered species. So all pretty similar number of the species were present in each dam. So like I said, most fell within a similar tier, and all fell within the SARP's tool analysis of the top 10 watersheds per state. And so that's based on the number of state listed species of greatest conservation need. And every single one of the dams on the Nature Conservancy properties fell within that top 10 watershed per state. So since all of my criteria have been pretty similar so far, except for the connectivity was the only one where I had 2 dams stand out. So I decided maybe I should just focus a little bit more on the connectivity. So I use the Stream Stats tool to delineate the watersheds of those top 2 priority dams, so the Herds Lake Dam and then the unnamed dam that was in the top right corner. So I uploaded the watershed shapefiles. So this is the watershed for that unnamed dam in the top corner. You can see it's a pretty small watershed, and that dam does fall though on a first order stream, which can be very harmful to the system as a whole. I then did the watershed for the Herds Lake Dam, and I actually found that 3 other dams fell in the watershed. So at the point where the Herds Lake Dam is, it's actually a third order stream, and there's 1 dam located on a first order stream in that same watershed system, and then 2 dams located on a second order stream, again in that same watershed system. Okay, so based on the criteria that I could use, I prioritized Herds Lake Dam as a top priority dam for removal. It is low hazard, but it is an earth fill, which is less expensive to remove. It is a top 10 watershed for the state listed species of greatest conservation need, and it, at over a whopping 11 miles gained, it did have the most connectivity gained. I also prioritized the other dams that were within the Herd Lake Dam watershed. It would, again, just continue to increase the connectivity for that watershed as a whole, and you're going to be removing dams from first order and as well second order streams, which is just good for the whole watershed overall. I then, for my third dam, prioritized that unnamed dam that was in the top right corner, and I based that off of it being in a top 10 watershed for state listed species of greatest conservation need, and it had the second most connectivity gained. And again, that one was on a first order stream, which the removal of that would benefit the entire system as a whole. Going forward, I definitely would recommend maybe getting more complete data. I think it would be really beneficial maybe if I could go out to the sites, or maybe get a crew together to go out to the sites and evaluate these dams ourselves, since there is a lot of data that's missing from them, and maybe we could get some different results and prioritize a few more dams for removal. I would like to thank Sarah Gottlieb from the Nature Conservancy for providing me with some data and images that I used in my project. I would also like to thank Dr. Keller for all of his help with this project and in this class throughout the semester. And then there are my resources. Thank you.